Hello, my name is Matthew,
My name is Amanda.
and we're with the Tampa Hillsborough County Public Library. Welcome to One Book, One Night, Marina by Carlos Ruiz Zafron. And this is part of our Hispanic Heritage Month celebration, which is just getting going here in the first couple of weeks, but we have more to come. And you can see the URL there, hcplc.org/Hispanic Heritage. There you will find out all different kinds of great reading materials that you can look into, different ways to celebrate Hispanic heritage, and a special event on October 14th, Silvia Moreno Garcia, an author we are very, very excited about having. So please do attend that event and tell others as well, because we really want her to be well welcomed into Hillsborough County. And now, without further ado, if you don't know what One Book, One Night is all about, we're going to read. We're going to read in English and Spanish, but we're also going to do a couple other things. There'll be a chance for a giveaway later on in the program. And the idea is we are choosing materials that we think you might be able to read in one or maybe just a couple of different sittings and actually get through them because they're so short or they're so gripping or a combination of both. So that's what One Book and One Night is all about. And now let's do our book shout out. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Matthew. And actually, this is it's not just a book shout out, this is an author shout out for the author of tonight's novel, Marina, Carlos Ruiz Zafron. He is one of the he's one of my favorite authors, and he's definitely written one of my favorite books in my definitely top 3 books of all time. And that is La Sombra del Viento, or The Shadow of the Wind. Now, these books, if you like books now, Marina, you can definitely read One Book, One Night because it is a little bit shorter. But a lot of his books, you are really going to want to sink your teeth into. They're a little bit longer. They will probably take you longer than one night, several pages, a lot of stuff to grasp there. But he writes in a really great Gothic style. If you like books about literature, or as I call them, books about books, this is perfect for you. He has a series, or it's a tetralogy, I believe, called The Cemetery of Forgotten Books, or El Cementerio de Libros Olvidados. I would definitely recommend that book series. He also has Tonight We're Reading Marina. That is one of his YA books, or his young adult books. He has quite a few other ones you can check out. So he has Prince of the Mist, Midnight Palace, Watcher in the Shadows, and The Lights of September. Most of these we have in both Spanish and English in our collection. So as you know, we are providing curbside service. So you can go into our regular catalog and you can reserve these and you can send them on hold for your nearest library branch or your home library branch, or you can check out our digital books. Those are available on Overdrive or the Libby app that goes with Overdrive, or we even have a couple on Hoopla. Now, the great thing about these is they are electronic. We have some audiobooks, digital audiobooks, and we do have some digital ebooks that you can check out there. And you can, again, you can go to hcplc.org/books and you can find our catalog, and then you can find the link to our ebooks to check these books out. Again, I totally recommend, if you've read anything of his, you can put it in the comments section, but this is a great author for you to discover.
It is so good, yes. And just very, very good. That's another reason we chose it. So let's get started, shall we, Amanda?
Okay, shall we turn off our cameras, Matthew?
Let's do it. Chapter 1. In the late 1970s, Barcelona was a mirage of avenues and winding alleys where one could easily travel 30 or 40 years into the past by just stepping into the foyer of a grand old building or walking into a cafe. Time and memory, history and fiction merged in the enchanted city like watercolors in the rain. It was there in the lingering echo of streets that no longer exist that cathedrals and age-old palaces created the tapestry into which this story could be woven. I was then a 15-year-old boy, languishing in a boarding school named after some half-forgotten saint on the lower slopes of the hill to Valvedrera. In those days, the district of Soria still looked like a small village stranded on the shores of an Art Nouveau metropolis. My school stood at the top end of a narrow street that climbed up from Paseo de la Bonanova. Its monumental facade was more reminiscent of a castle than a school, and its angular red brick silhouette formed a dark maze of turrets, arches, and wings. The school was surrounded by a sprawling citadel of gardens, fountains, muddy ponds, courtyards, and shadowy pine woods. Here and there, somber buildings housed swimming pools, enveloped in a ghostly vapor, eerily silent gyms and gloomy chapels where images of long-fingered angels grinned in the flickering candlelight. The main building was 4 stories high, not counting the 2 basements and an attic set apart as an enclosed residence for a few aging priests who still worked as teachers. The boarders' rooms were located along the cavernous corridors of the 4th floor. These endless galleries lay in perpetual darkness, always shrouded in a spectral aura. I spent my days lost in hopeless reverie in the cold classrooms of that huge castle, waiting for the miracle that took place every afternoon at 20 minutes past 5, at that magical hour when the setting sun drenched the tall windows with liquid gold. The bell announcing the end of lessons rang, and we boarders were allowed almost 3 free hours before dinner was served in the vast dining hall. The idea was that we should devote this time to studying and to meditation. But in all honesty, I don't remember having applied myself even once to either of those noble pursuits the whole time I was there. It was my favorite moment of the day. Slipping past the porter's lodge, I'd go out and explore the city. I made an art of getting back to school just in time for dinner, having wandered through streets and avenues in the darkening twilight. During those walks, I felt an exhilarating sense of freedom. My imagination would take wing and soar high above the buildings. For a few hours, the streets of Barcelona, the boarding school, and my gloomy room on the 4th floor seemed to vanish. For a few hours, with just a couple of coins in my pocket, I was the luckiest person in the world. My route would often take me through what in those days was still known as the Desert of Sarriá. No sandy dunes or anything remotely desert-like about it. It was, in fact, just the remains of a forest lost in no man's land. Most of the old mansions that had once populated the top end of Paseo de la Bonanova, though still standing, were in an incipient state of ruin. And all the streets surrounding the boarding school were developing the eerie atmosphere of a ghost town. Ivy-clad walls blocked the ways into wild gardens where huge residences loomed, derelict weed-choked palaces through which memory seemed to drift like a perpetual mist. Some of those decaying properties awaited demolition. Others had been ransacked over the years. Some, however, were still inhabited. Their occupants were members of dying dynasties, long forgotten, families whose names had filled entire pages of the local paper in the old days when trams were still regarded with skepticism as a modern invention. Now they were the hostages of a rapidly fading era who refused to abandon their sinking ships, fearing perhaps that if they dared step outside their withered homes, they might turn to ashes and be blown away in the wind. They wasted away like prisoners entombed in the relics of their lost glory. Sometimes as I hurried past rusty gates and ghostly gardens peopled by worn, faceless statues, I could sense their owners' suspicious looks from behind faded shutters.
Y ahora leo en español. Capítulo 1. A finales de la década de los 70, Barcelona era un espejismo de avenidas y callejones donde uno podía viajar 30 o 40 años hacia el pasado con solo cruzar el umbral de una portería o un café. El tiempo y la memoria, historia y ficción se fundían en aquella ciudad hechicera como acuarelas en la lluvia. Fue allí, al eco de calles que ya no existan, donde catedrales y edificios fugados de fábulas tramaron el decorado de esta historia. Por entonces yo era un muchacho de 15 años que languidecía entre las paredes de un internado con nombre de santo en las faldas de carretera de Valvidrera. En aquellos días la barriada de Sarriá conservaba aún el aspecto de pequeño pueblo varado a orillas de una metrópolis modernista. Mi colegio se alzaba en lo alto de una calle que trepaba desde el Paseo de la Bonanova. Su monumento fachada sugería más un castillo que una escuela. Su angulosa silueta de color arcilloso era un rompecabezas de torrones, arcos y alas en tinieblas. El colegio estaba rodeado por una ciudadela de jardines, puentes, estanques cenagosos, patios y pinares encantados. En torno a él, edificios sombríos albergaban piscinas veladas de vapor fantasmal, gimnasios embrujados de silencio y capillas tenebrosas, donde imágenes de santos sonreían al reflejo de los cirios. El edificio levantaba 4 pisos, sin contar los 2 sótanos y un altillo clausura donde vivían los pocos sacerdotes que todavía ejercían como profesores. Las habitaciones de los internos estaban situadas a lo largo de corredores cavernosos en el 4º piso. Estas interminables galerías yacían en perpetua penumbra, siempre envueltas en el eco espectral. Yo pasaba mis días soñando despierto en las aulas de aquel inmenso castillo, esperando el milagro que se producía todos los días a las 5:20 de la tarde. A esa hora mágica, el sol vestía de oro líquido los ventanales. Sonaba el timbre que anunciaba el fin de las clases y los internos gozábamos de casi 3 horas libres antes de la cena en el gran comedor. La idea era que ese tiempo debía estar dedicado al estudio y a la reflexión espiritual. No recuerdo haberme entregado a ninguna de estas nobles tareas en un solo día los que pasé allí. Aquel era mi momento favorito. Burlando el control de portería partía a explorar la ciudad. Me acostumbré a volver al internado justo a tiempo para la cena, caminando entre viejas calles y avenidas mientras anochecía a mi alrededor. En aquellos largos paseos experimentaba una sensación de libertad embriagadora. Mi imaginación volaba por encima de los edificios y se elevaba al cielo. Durante unas horas, las calles de Barcelona, el internado y mi lúgubre habitación en el 4º piso se desvanecían. Durante unas horas, con solo un par de monedas en el bolsillo, era el individuo más afortunado del universo. A menudo mi ruta me llevaba por lo que entonces se llamaba el desierto de Sarriá, que no era más que un amago de bosque perdido en tierra de nadie. La mayoría de las antiguas mansiones señoriales que en su día habían poblado al norte del Paseo de la Bonanova se mantenía todavía en pie, aunque solo fuese en ruinas. Las calles que rodeaban al internado trazaban una ciudad fantasma. Muros cubiertos de hiedra vedaban el paso a jardines salvajes en los que se alzaban monumentales residencias. Palacios invadidos por la maleza y el abandono en los que la memoria parecía flotar, como niebla que se resiste a marchar. Muchos de estos caserones aguardaban el derribo y otros tantos habían sido saqueados durante años. Algunos, sin embargo, aún estaban habitados. Sus ocupantes eran los miembros olvidados de estirpes reunidas, gentes cuyo nombre se escribía cuando las 4 columnas en la vanguardia, cuando los tranvías aún despertaban el recelo de los inventos modernos. Rehenes de su pasado moribundo, que se negaban a abandonar las naves a la deriva. Temían que, si osaban poner los pies más allí de sus mansiones ajadas, sus cuerpos se desvaneciesen en cenizas al viento. Prisionarios languidecían a la luz de los candelabros. A veces, cuando cruzaba frente a aquellas verjas oxidadas con paso apresurado, me parecía sentir miradas recelosas desde los póstigos despintados.
All right, thank you, Amanda. So we are going to read the next section, but first we want to hear from you. So this is a very, as Amanda describes, a very gothic, very thrilling novel, actually goes in all different kinds of interesting directions. It's really kind of thrilling, actually, in that way. And so give us your thrilling, chilling, and mysterious book recommendations. What do you find to be really that really captures you in that way? And did you finish any of them in one sitting or one evening? You can answer some of those questions while we're reading the next section, and then we'll share some of your responses.
Sí, buscamos libros escalofriantes y misteriosos. So we're looking for those mysterious, spine-tingling, spine-chilling books for our next section.
Okay, chapter 1 continued. One afternoon toward the end of September 1979, I decided to venture down a street I hadn't noticed before. One of those roads studded with Art Nouveau mansions. It curved around, and at the end, it stood an ornate iron gate, no different from many others in the area. Beyond this entrance lay the remains of a garden marked by years of neglect. Through the weeds, I glimpsed the outline of a two-story home, its somber facade rising behind a fountain with stone mermaid whose face time had covered with a veil of moss. It was beginning to get dark, and I thought the place looked rather sinister, even for my taste. A grave silence enveloped it. Only the breeze seemed to whisper a wordless warning. I realized I'd walked into one of Saria's dead spots, and I decided I'd better retrace my steps and return to the boarding school. I was hovering between my morbid fascination with that forgotten place and common sense when I noticed two bright yellow eyes in the shadows fixed on me like daggers. I swallowed hard. The motionless silhouette of a cat with velvety gray fur stood out against the gate of the old manor. In its mouth it held a tiny half-dead sparrow, and a silver bell hung from its neck. The cat studied me coldly for a few seconds, then turned and slid under the metal bars of the gate. I watched as it disappeared into the immensity of that lost paradise, carrying the sparrow on its last journey. I was struck by the sight of the haughty, defiant little beast. Judging by its shiny fur and its bell, I surmised that it had an owner. It looked well-fed. Perhaps this building was home to something more than the ghosts of a Barcelona long agone. I walked up to the gate and put my hands on the iron bars. They felt cold. The last gleam of sunset lit up the shiny trail of blood left by the sparrow through that jungle, scarlet pearls marking a path toward the labyrinth. I swallowed again. Or rather, I tried to swallow. My mouth was dry. I could feel my pulse throbbing in my temples as if it knew something I didn't know. Just then, I felt the gate yielding under my weight and realized it was open.
Okay, capítulo 1 continuado. Una tarde, a finales de septiembre de 1979, decidí aventurarme por azar en una de aquellas avenidas sembradas de palacetes modernistas en la que no había reparado hasta entonces. La calle describía una curva que terminaba en una verja igual que muchas otras. Más allí se extendían los restos de un viejo jardín marcado por décadas de abandono. Entre la vegetación se apreciaba la silueta de una vivienda de 2 pisos. Su sombría fachada se erguía tras una fuente con esculturas que el tiempo había vestido de musgo. Empezaba a oscurecer y aquel rincón se me antojó un tanto siniestro. Rodeado por un silencio mortal, únicamente la brisa susurraba una advertencia sin palabras. Comprendí que me había metido en una de las zonas muertas del barrio. Decidí lo que mejor era regresar sobre mis pasos y volver al internado. Estaba debatiéndome entre la fascinación morbosa hacia aquel lugar olvidado y el sentido común cuando advertí 2 brillantes ojos amarillos encendidos en la penumbra, clavados en mí como dagas. Tragué saliva. El pelaje gris y aterciopelado de un gato se recortaba inmóvil frente a la verja del caserón. Un pequeño gorrión agonizaba entre sus fauces. Un cascabel plateado pendía del cuello del felino. Su mirada me estudió durante unos segundos. Poco después se dio media vuelta y se deslizó entre los barrotes de metal. Lo vi perderse en la inmensidad de aquel Edán maldito portando al gorrión en su último viaje. La visión de aquella pequeña fiera altiva y desafiante me cautivó. A juzgar por su lustroso pelaje y su cascabel, intuí que tenía dueño. Tal vez aquel edificio albergaba algo más que los fantasmas de una Barcelona desaparecida. Me acerqué y posé las manos sobre los barrotes de la entrada. El metal estaba frío. Las últimas luces del crepúsculo encendían al rastro que las gotas de sangre del gorrión habían dejado a través de aquella celda. Perlas escarlatas trazando la ruta en el laberinto. Tragué saliva otra vez, o mejor dicho, lo intenté. Tenía la boca seca, el pulso, como si supiese algo que yo ignoraba, me latía en las sienes con fuerza. Fue entonces cuando sentí ceder bajo mi peso la puerta y comprendí que estaba abierta.
All right, thank you, Amanda. So we had a couple responses. You can type them into your questions section here. I'm going to share one off the bat here. One person writes, a book I read recently is Mexican Gothic. I found it super creepy. I read it pretty quick, albeit not in one sitting, and it was very suspenseful. So I'm just going to go ahead and
Wow.
share that with everybody there. You should be able to see that on your screen.
And Matthew, Mexican Gothic is the latest novel by Silvia Moreno Garcia, who we will be hosting on October 14th. I agree. I also read that one, not in one sitting. It was actually, these books are muy parecidos. They're very they're not plot wise, but tonally they are very similar. If you like that kind of creepy old school Gothic kind of Dickens meets Edgar Allan Poe type of style, you will enjoy both of those. And I will say, Mexican Gothic, no spoilers, there's nothing graphic, but there is some pretty imagery. If disturbing imagery gets to you, that's a scary one.
That's what's so interesting. I'm sure you guys noticed that even though there's sort of a suspenseful thing and maybe is not your thing, but there's still the illustrations with words are so amazing and they're so good, they're so powerful. And I am one who does not read mystery much, not because it turns me off, but just because it's not my general interest. But it's nice to cleanse the palate every now and then and enjoy something else, just like food or something. You want to eat something a little different every now and then because
Exactly.
it's interesting and new and exciting, and you can go back to your staples after that. One of our audience members says the same thing. I don't like mystery, but did like this novel and does like it. And so yeah, I very much agree. Mystery is not my main genre, but this one's a pretty good one. This is our, we'll say gracias or thank you. And this is our contact information. If you want to find out more about upcoming things or need help with anything library related, we're happy to be there and help you. 813-273-3652 or hcplc.org/contact. And of course, as we said, this is part of Hispanic Heritage Month. There, in addition to the author event we mentioned before on Wednesday, October 14th, there's also other events coming up, as well as activities and reading recommendations and other ways to celebrate this important month. So check that out at hcplc.org/Hispanic Heritage. Shall we read a little bit more, Amanda?
Okay, well, I think we're coming on as the encore. We're running up to time, but we're going to finish out, for those who want to stay with us, the first part of the chapter, which also ends on a nice.
You gotta see how chapter 1 ends.
They'll get you hooked in with this book and make you want to read more. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's go ahead and do that, Matthew. I'm going to turn my camera off.
Okay, and before we go to the next slide, Amanda, we do have one more question that I think we will have to reach out to you directly, but if anybody else has a recommendation, you can respond. I'm going to send this to everybody. Any book recommendations with Hispanic history to read along with an 8-year-old child? So if any of you have a recommendation, please share it in the questions section, and we'll share it out. Otherwise, we will respond to you directly. We'll do a little research and see what we can find.
We will definitely respond. I don't know if you're looking for something more fiction or nonfiction, but we do have some great books. I am going to share. These are fiction books, so they're not strictly historical. I will share two things. One, this is younger than 8 years old, but we do share some great books in this. In this program, we do a bilingual story time every Tuesday at 9:30. So the majority of the month, we are doing a Spanish-English bilingual story time. We just had we just celebrated Hispanic Heritage last month as our programming theme. I'm going to share with you not specifically a couple book titles, but some authors you might want to check out who have short chapter books with 8-year-olds and some picture books. So some ones that really celebrate Hispanic heritage are by the author and illustrator Duncan Tonatua. Tonatia. He has some books that are really neat about, he has one that called Separate is Never Equal. He has one, I can't remember, it's called Peace Soldiers, but it's about Latino soldiers who protested World War I for peace reasons. He has some really great ones. He's done some illustrating for other authors as well. I'm going to recommend the author Pat Mora. She has some picture books that can run for younger kids or older kids. Yuyi Morales, that's Y-U-Y-U or Y-U Morales would be a good author to do that. And then some authors that write some chapter books. I do not know the author, but we have one in the collection called Juana y Lucas, and that is a bilingual book. So it's a mix of English and Spanish writing, and it's a chapter book about friendship. We have Cuando Tia Lola vino a visitar, and visitar is cruzado, quedarse, when Aunt Lola came to visit, and then visit is crossed out, and stay. That is by Julia Alvarez, I believe. And then another one is Me llamo Maria Isabel by Alma Flor Ares. So those are some books that would be really great that celebrate Hispanic identity and Hispanic heritage.
Chapter 1, Encore. As I stepped into the garden, the moon lit up the veiled face of the mermaid emerging from the black waters of the fountain. She was observing me. I stood there transfixed, expecting her to slither out of the pond and spread a wolfish grin, revealing a serpent's tongue and long fangs. None of that happened. Taking a deep breath, I considered reining in my imagination, or better still, giving up my timid exploration of the property altogether. Once again, someone made the decision for me. A celestial sound wafted through the shadows of the garden like a perfume. I could make out traces of its soft tones carving out the notes of an aria to the accompaniment of a piano. It was the most beautiful voice I had ever heard. The melody was familiar, though I couldn't put a name to it. It came from inside the house. I followed its hypnotic trail. Sheets of diaphanous light filtered through the half-open door of a glass conservatory, above which I recognized the cat's eyes fixed on mine from a windowsill on the first floor. I drew closer to the illuminated sunroom, and its alluring sound. It was a woman's voice. The faint halo of 100 candles twinkled outside, revealing the golden horn of an old gramophone spinning a record. Without thinking what I was doing, I found myself walking into the conservatory, bewitched by the music from the gramophone. Sitting next to it on the table was a round, shiny object, a pocket watch. I picked it up and examined it in the candlelight. The hands had stopped, and the dial was cracked. It looked like gold and as old as the house itself. A bit farther away, a large armchair had its back to me, facing a fireplace above which hung an oil portrait of a woman dressed in white. Her large gray eyes, sad and profound, presided over the room. Suddenly, the spell was shattered. A figure rose from the armchair and turned to look at me. A head of long white hair and eyes burning like red-hot coals shone in the dark. The only other thing I managed to see were two huge, pale hands reaching out toward me. As I scrambled off in a panic, heading for the door, I bumped into the gramophone and knocked it over. I heard the needle scratch the record, and the heavenly voice broke off with a hellish scream. Those hands brushed my shirt as I rushed out into the garden with wings on my feet and fear burning in every pore of my body. I didn't pause for a moment. I ran and ran without looking back until a sharp pain tore through my side, and I realized I could hardly breathe. By then I was bathed in cold sweat and could see the school lights shining some 30 meters ahead. I slipped in through one of the kitchen doors that was rarely guarded and crept up to my room. The other boarders must have gone down to the dining room a good while earlier. I dried the sweat from my forehead, and slowly my heart recovered its normal rhythm. I was beginning to feel calmer when someone rapped on my door. "Oscar, time to come down to dinner," chimed the voice of one of my tutors, a free-thinking Jesuit named Segui, who disliked having to play the policeman. "I'll be right down, Father," I replied. "Just a second." I hurriedly put on the jacket required for dinner and turned off the light. Through the window, the moon specter hovered over Barcelona. Only then did I realize that I was still holding the gold watch in my hand.
Y al final, capítulo 1, encore. Cuando di el primer paso hacia el interior, la luna iluminaba el rostro pálido de los ángeles de piedra de la fuente. Me observaban Los pies se me habían clavado en el suelo. Esperaba que aquellos seres saltasen de sus pedestales y transformasen en demonios armados de garras lobunas y lenguas de serpiente. No sucedió nada de eso. Respiré profundamente, considerando la posibilidad de anular mi imaginación o, mejor aún, abandonar mi tímida exploración de aquella propiedad. Una vez más, alguien decidió por mí. Un sonido celestial invadió las sombras del jardín, igual que un perfume. Escuché los perfiles de aquel susurro cincelear en un aria acompañada al piano. Era la voz más hermosa que jamás había oído. La melodía me resultó familiar, pero no acerté al reconocerla. La música provenía de la vivienda. Seguí su rastro hipnótico. Láminas de luz vaporosa se filtraban desde la puerta entreabierta de una galería de cristal. Reconocí los ojos del gato, fijos en mí desde el alféizar de un ventanal del primer piso. Me aproximé hasta la galería iluminada de la que manaba aquel sonido indescriptible, la voz de una mujer. El halo tenue de 100 velas parpadeaba en el interior. El brillo descubría la trompa dorada de un viejo gramófono en el que giraba un disco. Sin pensar en lo que estaba haciendo, me sorprendí a mí mismo adentrándome en la galería, cautivado por aquella sirena atrapada en el gramófono. En la mesa sobre la que descansaba el artilugio distinguí un objeto brillante e esférico. Era un reloj de bolsillo. Lo tomé y lo examiné a la luz de las velas. Las agujas estaban paradas y la esfera astillada. Me pareció de oro y tan viejo como la casa en la que me encontraba. Un poco más allí había un gran butacón de espaldas de mí, frente a una chimenea sobre la cual pude apreciar un retrato al óleo de una mujer vestida de blanco. Sus grandes ojos grises, tristes y sin fondo, presidían la sala. Súbitamente el hechizo se hizo trizas. Una silueta se alzó de la butaca y se giró hacia mí. Una larga cabellera blanca y unos ojos encendidos como brasas brillaron en la oscuridad. Solo acerté a ver dos inmensos manos blancos extendiéndose hacia mí. Presa del pánico, eché a correr hacia la puerta. Tropecé en mi camino. Siento. Tropecé en el camino con el gramófono y lo derribé. Escuché la aguja lacerar el disco. La voz celestial se rompió con un gemido infernal. Me lancé hacia el jardín, sintiendo aquellas manos rozándome la camisa. Lo crucé con alas en los pies, el miedo ardiendo en cada poro de mi cuerpo. No me detuve ni un instante. Corrí y corrí sin mirar atrás hasta que una punzada de dolor me taladró el costado y comprendí que apenas podía respirar. Para entonces estaba cubierto de sudor frío y las luces del internado brillaban 30 metros más allí. Me deslicé por una puerta junto a las cocinas que nunca estaba vigilada y me arrastré hasta mi habitación. Los demás internados ya debían de estar en el comedor desde hacía rato. Me sequé el sudor de la frente y poco a poco mi corazón recuperó su ritmo habitual. Empezaba a tranquilizarme cuando alguien golpeó de la puerta de la habitación con nudillos. Oscar, orden de bajar a cenar, entonó la voz de uno de los tutores, una jesuita racionalista llamado Seguí, que detestaba tener que hacer de policía. Ahora mismo, padre, contestó. Un segundo. Me apresuré a colocarme la chaqueta de rigor y apagué la luz de la habitación. A través de la ventana, el espectro de la luna se alzaba sobre Barcelona. Solo entonces me di cuenta que todavía sostenía el reloj de oro en la mano. Okay, and that is the end of chapter 1. Estamos al fin del primer capítulo.
All right, thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you everybody very much for joining us.
Buenas noches. Goodbye.
Thank you.